Hey guys, it's Will here, and we live in a world that is overflowing with information, and the ones who learn how to think are the ones that create the future and are able to capitalize on it. And today, I'm taking years worth of knowledge and decades of wisdom with some of the greatest minds in business and investing, and I'm going to compact them down into just a few minutes for you. So, these books that I'm about to share with you taught me how to see money differently and how to see business differently and how to spot opportunities early in the markets or be able to build into them as a business owner. And this video is actually recommended by one of our subscribers that you have to do a breakdown of your top books for investing. And I thought it's funny because a lot of our investing books are almost that built our investor mindset are almost not even investing, they're business books. And so I'm going to share with you those and how they've helped us to understand the individual components and pieces that make up great businesses, and also has allowed us to grow our businesses to values in the millions of dollars at this point. So let's take a look at the top books. The first book, if you're just getting started in investing, a good one rule of thumb is to start kind of long term and work your way into the short term. That's what I did. And the problem is people start with all the short term stuff because it's like really exciting and you can make a ton of money. And it's also the easiest and highest risk way to lose money. And so you don't want to really start with super high risk, shorter term stuff usually. I mean, you can, but why not use time to your advantage, learn all of the long-term things, and then dial in the short term so that you know that the long term is working for you as you're dialing in the short term. And so that's how I've approached it, at least, and it's worked really well for me personally. When I was growing up, my family didn't really have any financial education. They didn't talk about the financials at the dinner table. In fact, I have memories of my dad getting really upset around bills that would be coming in the mail. We lost our house basically in 2008. I totally understand the side of the economics and investing when you don't have money. And these are the books that really motivated me to want to learn that so I can provide for my family and build a life to give my parents freedom as well. And I've been able to do that by reading these books. And so I hope that they're helpful for you and that they give you the insights to identify the individual things that drive a successful company. And what you'll notice is that it's not just one thing. You can do one thing, but if you learn the major components, not so much all the minor stuff, but the major components that make up great companies, you'll be in a good spot to pick individual stocks or investments successfully. And you might say, Will, a lot of people say individual stocks, 95% of people fail. And what do you have to say about that? Well, I think that number, if we look at it now, it's more investors are having success picking individual stocks now than they have in the past. There's more information available, and the information quality is now at a time where if you look at the companies that look at how hard it was to get information in the past, it was hard. In this book, Benjamin Graham, Value Investing, he was the mentor of Warren Buffett. They constantly are saying things. If you hear in interviews, like if you're just getting started as an investor, invest in index funds. And index funds are a great starting point. And when I was first starting out, this book helped me along with a book here that was called Warren Buffett Speaks here. And it tells you how index funds are really powerful. But you'll also notice that these people, like Benjamin Graham and Warren Buffett, actually don't do index funds. They invest in individual stocks. So I wanted to know, well, if they can do it, why can't we do it? And the truth is, you can. And most people get discouraged and they stop. But the people that really have a plan to learn how and continue towards a goal of learning how to invest profitably will invest profitably. It's like a law. It's like, so long as we know this, if you throw a ball up in the air, it's going to come back down. It's the same thing with wanting to achieve a goal and becoming good at it. It's like you just have to do the work to get there. And so it's not like these books are just something that I read and then boom, I had the information to do it. It's also these books I picked out in certain situations to learn. And so you got Warren Buffett Speaks. That one was when I was about 18 years old, and I was learning about the long-term investing. And it's a great book on Warren Buffett. It's got some good. Peter Lynch is mentioned quite a bit and has some testimonials on the book, along with John C. Bogle from Vanguard. And speaking of Vanguard, when I first started, not only did we have this Benjamin Graham, this book, taught us how to also kind of look at individual stocks. And when we are looking at individual stocks, there's one thing I learned, which I'll share before I get into the next book here, which is Freakonomics, which is that I started learning how if a company has a market cap that is lower than their total assets, for example, or that the income is greater than that of their market cap, then that's an undervalued company. Like there's certain financials that you can pick out and read. And this book talks about what those financials are and what Benjamin Graham taught Warren Buffett. So it's a great book for long-term investing. Now, this book, as I mentioned, Vanguard, my uncle, who, while my parents were struggling and our family was having a tough time, let's say in 2008, they would sometimes help our family out because they had more money. And he was very smart because my grandpa had a neighbor who was pretty wealthy, while my grandpa's family and my mom's family was fairly middle class. They had a neighbor who was very wealthy and very good at investing, and he knew all of the people on Wall Street and things like that. And he would get all of the information. And it's funny, my grandpa, when I was younger, used to send me all of the reports and stuff of all these companies, so I got to learn early. But he did the same thing, and while my grandpa wasn't rich, he actually helped his son, who is my uncle, become wealthy as well, because he would say, go talk to the neighbor. I don't know what they're doing, but I know they're doing some stock stuff. Go talk to the neighbor. And got my uncle to invest in index funds when he was very young, just getting into the military, things like that. And so my uncle said, look, learn how credit cards work, how to use them to your advantage, and how you don't want them to work against you. And get an index fund with Vanguard and read this book, Freakonomics. I read the book, and it's a great one that goes over a lot of the psychology of what contributes to the markets and the economy. And so Vanguard long-term is just something that's helped me over the years. And that book kind of walks you through why the market kind of always goes up. Now, I know there's a lot to process, but here's the other ones. These two are going to be the simple, more of the shorter term stuff. So once I learn those things, I want to know, what are the shorter term things? I learned stock charts. So stock charts for dummies, it's honestly exactly how the institutions have documented how they look at the charts. So stock charts for dummies, and then stock investing for dummies. This one goes into more of the how investors make profitable investments. Very simple, very straightforward, but being able to see from the lens of what is generally taught does help you, because you can understand the psychological levels, for example, in the charts, how the indicators work, how to set a stop loss, how to do orders, how to invest with the basics. And you want to understand the basics when you start to get into medium to short-term investing. You want to understand what different orders are, what are different types of options and things like that. And these books help a ton. Now, when it comes to the actual understanding of the individual businesses, because you want to, so you could see I kind of learned the longer term stuff, kind of set myself up a little bit there. And then we're learning, okay, that's kind of set up like index funds, things like that. Now I start learning about the individual stocks. But the problem is, I don't even know what makes a successful company at this age. When I was just getting started, I said, I don't even know what makes a successful company. I know I want to have a business at some point. I'm just going to start learning about what makes a good business. And there's a few books that brought me to that. And one of the books here was called The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker. And it talks about the practices of management for managing for results. It's an old book. And I joke with my wife about this because we say the books that we paid 50 cents for at the thrift store are the books that generated millions of dollars. And I really believe that. It's really funny. But this Effective Executive book, Peter Drucker was someone that consulted for McKinsey or Sears and General Motors and AT&T back in the 70s, 80s, and was the go-to for executive management. And so it allowed me to learn it for business as an entrepreneur, but it allowed me to identify when companies were doing good executive management in their companies and how they talked and how they worked with their employees, or how they talked about the vision and what they were structuring. This book allowed me to identify good executives in companies, because the executives drive the business. And so if you're identifying a company and you're looking for value in a company, and if it's going to continue to grow, looking at the executives is what I thought would be the way to really help you identify if the company's good. So this book allows you to pick out what makes a good executive, what are the good practices that you want to look for, and what do you not want to look for, and what doubts should you have going into looking at executive management that should not be practices that are good. And that brings us to the next book, which is Wall Street's Think Tank. This book is about how Wall Street's most successful investments that they've had, or the different biggest trades in the world, how did they happen? And it's also the Council on Foreign Relations and Empire of Neoliberal Geopolitics from 1976 to 2014. And it talks about capitalism and then the differences between let's say socialist capitalism, but how Wall Street thinks about it, how it affects the economy or how it affects the markets, and how they execute orders or plan for these things. And it's a really good book, and I highly recommend it. But I wouldn't put it number one at all. I would put it as something you don't do until you're very, it's more, academic, and it's not the easiest read if you haven't gone through some of the basics that we're sharing first. So when it comes to effective executives and looking at what doesn't make a good company, or looking for bad things in a company, sometimes that's what you identify. And you might see a company that doesn't have good financials. And this book is called The Lean Startup. And, when you're investing, you're immediately, if you're a good investor, a lot of times, you're starting with uncertainty, and then that only ends in certainty. And you don't want to start with certainty, because a lot of times that will end with uncertainty. And you'll be like, wait, well, you start with certainty, you get into a stock, but then you don't understand, and later you're like, oh, I don't really know. That's not a place. You want to start with uncertainty, really admit you don't know, figure it out, and then end in certainty, whether it's a good deal or not a good deal. And so sometimes, we come to different companies that don't have good financials, but they're contributing to the marketplace and they're building products that are valuable, but we know that their financials aren't good. And so being able to identify the companies that are startups and what makes them successful is a good thing to know, because you could say, okay, maybe the financials aren't there, but if they're iterating in this way and they're cycling through and making progress this way, well, it would make sense they'd be successful. This is put together by some people that put together, for example, Y Combinator. They talk about that, and it's great for your own your own business, but also for identifying good startups that are in the markets. So the next book that I found, there's so many good ones, but this one is if you struggled with understanding integrity in the markets. And a lot of times people get into companies that they don't understand, and it ends up being a company that's not always of integrity. And they end up investing in it, and maybe there's dilution that's really bad, or there's something else that's really bad. Maybe it's that they make a product decision or an announcement from a CEO or something that's not of integrity, or they flip the switch on something. It's like a bait and switch type of deal. This book is called Principle-Centered Leadership. And it talks about how it's by Stephen Covey, who also has a great book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And that's a great book as well. That's more on the personal side probably. But when it comes to principle-centered leadership, what makes a company great is that it's built on a strong foundation. And so this book focuses specifically on principle-centered leadership. So we're talking about things like integrity, things like honesty, things like identifying that there is a commitment level to certain things in the business and responsibility that has to be had. And you want to look for that in the leaders of the companies you invest in, because that will withstand the ups and downs of the economy and the markets that they're in. And when things are good or when things are bad, understanding the character of the people that work at the company is going to help you understand their resiliency and how they persist through challenges, and ultimately how much they're going to succeed. So, Principle-Centered Leadership by Stephen Covey, great book. Now, the other book here that is a big one for emotions is called The Behavior Gap. Now, I hear it all the time. Investors say, I get into this trade, I don't understand when to enter, when to exit. I buy at the top and I sell at the bottom, or I'm buying at the wrong time and I'm getting too emotional. This is simple ways to stop doing dumb things with money, is what it's called. And it has a bunch of like frameworks inside that are kind of like how you can think and go through your understanding greed and understanding fear and understanding the cycles of those things, and how to not repeat the things that will, cause you to lose money. Warren Buffett has a quote, and one of his most famous is, rule number 1 is not to lose money. Rule number 2 is to not break rule number 1. And this book will help you not lose money, I think. It's the behavior gap. So between 95% and 5%, what's the difference that investors do? It's a good one to learn, but it's only a piece of really kind of like risk management and kind of like the plan for the long term or short term. Those things are kind of what this book talks about, and it's more about avoiding the dumb mistakes. And so it saves you on the mistakes. So I like that book, The Behavior Gap by Carl Richards. Now, this book is, I think it's Einstein who said it's the 9th wonder of the world or something, or the 10th wonder, the compound effect. Jumpstart your income, your life, and your success. So anytime I'm having a tough time and I'm like, man, where is this going? Am I actually going anywhere with this? And I'm feeling like, gosh, this is slugging along or something. If you ever felt like that, I'll listen to this book, and it helps me to identify that there is a compound effect in, even though it's a small daily action or small thing that we're doing, over time, it's going to massively compound. And it goes for the good things as much as the bad things. Whether you plant the good, it will grow. If you plant the bad, it will grow. And this book really helps you identify, it's like, wow, maybe that's a really small habit, but that might be really detrimental. Or maybe it's a really small habit, but that might be something that makes a massive difference for me in the future. So I'm going to keep doing it. And it's more based on habits, but they talk about the financial side. And it makes you look at stocks that you might look at and say, 5 years have gone by, 10 years have gone by, and you say, wow, the value now, it's compounded so much. Look how much it's gone up. And this book talks about what makes the compound effect real, and it solidifies it in your brain so that when you're investing, you really understand that small daily gains are okay, those are good, and they lead to massive success. And it teaches you to have more patience around pursuing your goals. So this book, really good. It's one of my go-to, one of my favorite books. I read it all the time. Darren Hardy, The Compound Effect. There's also another one called The Slight Edge, which is very similar, which I like. Now, did we go over the blue ocean strategy? I don't know if we did. The blue ocean strategy, how to create uncontested market space and make the competition irrelevant. Now, this is by Chon Kim and Renee Marborn, and it says that if there is a red market, there's lots of sharks, lots of blood, not always bad. Sometimes that's good. It's a competitive market, but you want to look for markets and identify markets. This is good for business owners, but also for investors that are not having a lot of sharks tearing each other apart, that are actually blue, just a blue ocean, not a lot of competition at all. And that you'll want to look for companies that are creating their own market. And when you find companies, the Airbnbs, the Ubers, the quantum markets, the space tech markets, the different markets where you see companies build their own unique infrastructures or something that is bringing value to a new market, a creation of a new market, then that is where massive value can be created. So this book, The Blue Ocean Strategy, is one that I read quite often. Helps me with my own business to think outside the box a little bit and say, all right, well, that's what everyone's doing. And is there a market for something else? It talks about Circus Olay, for example. Like Circus Olay, nobody made money doing like the circus from town to town to town. It just didn't really make money. So they thought, all right, let's just go to a place and let's get a standard place, big city, big place, and let's do a show every week, and let's do premium. You go to the circuses that come from town to town, they're never really quite set up. They're always kind of, having trouble with the drinks and ordering, and maybe they don't move the kitchen there, so then you got food trucks and it's not as good, and you're figuring it out or whatever. Versus, let's set up a place and create a new market. It's a carnival that's always in town, but it's premium, and it's a new market. It's something that's doesn't exist. And so they created new markets, and that was an example of the blue ocean strategy. There's so many great examples in this book, and it helps you identify companies where you say, "Oh, they're creating a new market there. That could be really big." The blue ocean strategy. Now, we got 3 more books here, and there's a ton of books that we didn't mention. Some of them are, personal books that I would recommend, like Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's a great book. But here's another finance one, which is The Richest Man in Babylon. Richest Man in Babylon really taught me to, for example, in a story way, save 10% of what you earn, or to realize the compound effect, realize the amount of money that adds up. Some people, I think it's like $25 a day, $10,000 a year, something like that, where it's like people don't realize if they just save that much, it's a big amount at the end of the year. And so this book does that for you, and it's a really entertaining book. It's a great story. It's vivid. It's a great read if you're going to sleep, kind of a fiction, but it's all real world practice based on some really good principles that I would recommend. So The Richest Man in Babylon, that's a good one. Now, the last book that is great here is called The Tipping Point. This book has changed a lot for my business personally, but it has changed a ton for my portfolio. It talks about how there are certain things that reach a tipping point, and it allows you to see companies and say, ooh, they might be reaching a tipping point here. They're getting to this point, and that, ooh, if there's a shift there, imagine that shift that could happen because this company does this. And a good example is, for example, every single day, gangsters would spray the subways with graffiti in New York. And Malcolm Gladwell, who's a great psychologist, and he has some good books on this stuff, said they couldn't figure it out. All of the trains had graffiti on them. So it took them forever. It took them years. But one day they got a new commissioner, a new person that was in charge of the trains. And basically every single day they would take the trains that had graffiti, and it took them years to work through, and they would repaint them every single day. They would repaint them. And it took a long time. But eventually what happened was all the graffitiers were like, man, we're putting our graffiti and it's just gone the next day. We're just wasting paint. We're spending money on this and it's not doing anything. And eventually all of that went to zero. But it wasn't just that. Then the crime massively dropped. They had a huge crime epidemic in New York City. And the crime went way down. And crime went down. And then when crime went down, more people were having families, more people were expanding, more people had jobs, the economy surged, and it was all because of these little things. And so this book talks about tons of things like that, from different fads, different tipping points for trends, and it's one way that we were able to identify the quantum market. We were able to see that the quantum market was getting all of this consistent coverage, and that the AI narrative was the tipping point to push the quantum market. The AI narrative of this is taking a massive amount of energy, and quantum computers are that it tipped it, and all the stocks surged. They went 5, 10, 20x in a matter of months because of this tipping point. And so we identify them in the markets all the time. And this book lets you really identify where are those tipping points going to be? Where's the change going to be? And this one is highly recommended, not just for investing, but for business and for life in general. So there is a ton of honorable mentions that we didn't include. And there are some books that we didn't even put in here. One would be The Intelligent Investor. But there's also some good books that we have that we cover inside of StockMate. And if you're looking to really get the most out of the learning, I would encourage you. Let's have a look at least over at StockMate. We trade and invest there every single day. We have over 25 individuals with a net worth of over $1 million. And there's a book that I wrote and dropped into StockMate that's available free for all of our members. It's over here. And it goes over specifically the 95% don't succeed and 5% do. Reward versus vision, no plan, emotional, FOMO or pump and dumps versus trading plan, being disciplined, having a stock that meets your criteria, not just trading to trade, but trading to learn, and all the mindset shifts that go into the shorter term investing. And so a lot of these books help me dial in the long term, the shorter term trading and things like that. Examples of a trading plan and all the things that I've cumulatively learned have been put into this book for you, including like emotional IQ and all that stuff. You get this book for free inside of StockMate, and you'll also get our daily live trading that is happening about 18 hours from now, that we go live Monday through Friday. So if you'd like to join us there in our session tomorrow morning, you can join us in the second link in the description. And we recently opened up lifetime access again, so it's not a subscription, but you can enroll in StockMate, get access to the live sessions, and not only that, you get a free t-shirt that I'll send over to you anywhere in the world. You get an email in the morning, it takes you to a link that's a private session where you can join our session at market open. It's pretty early, about 6:30 a.m., but it's kind of later for the East Coast, but it's worth it. We get up there. I'm here at 6:30 a.m. Pacific time for the market open, and if you want to join us there, it's the second link below to join the daily live trading. I appreciate you all. I hope you have a great rest of your day, and thanks for watching. Hit the like button if I earned it. I'll see you in the next one. Take care.